Welcome, everyone, to the Dine Your Way podcast. We have a very special guest today, Dipika Delmenico, and she is a modern woman who is a bearer of ancient knowledge and wisdom of Ayurveda. And so today I thought it would be good for us to get into what is Ayurveda and how it can support those that are living with a life threatening illness, and even how caretakers can do some self care with the practices of Ayurveda. Some of them are very simple techniques that anybody can do at home. And I have been inspired by Dipika on a number of occasions on totally unrelated issues that have really transformed my life. So I am so happy to welcome Dipika Delmenico to the Dine Your Way podcast.
Hi, Claire. Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
Dipika. It's
It's
so
so good
great
to be
having
here.
you on. I am just, you're such a beauty. It's lovely to see you.
Oh, thank you. I am just so privileged to have this opportunity to be in conversation with you today and with all your divine listeners.
Thank
I look forward to seeing what wishes to be shared and
you.
spoken.
Exactly. I think a great place to start, because there will be listeners that aren't clear or don't know so much about what Ayurveda is and Ayurvedic practices in medicine, things like that. So, why don't you give us some broad brushstrokes on that?
Sure, yeah. Look, Ayurveda is one of the oldest healing systems that's recorded. It's more than 5,000 years old in its recorded history, and in essence, back then people were in somewhat more of an enlightened state than they are now, and but even then they could see that it was really difficult for humankind to navigate their way through life without getting pretty lost and disconnected and discombobulated from who they are.
Yeah,
And so Ayurveda was really gifted to humanity to show us the nature of life, to show us our nature,
mm,
so that we can become established in the business of being ourselves and really live a life that is connected to spirit.
exactly. It's a holistic approach.
It's
Body,
totally holistic.
body
It's
mind, spirit.
totally holistic
Mhm.
because it encompasses all the invisible aspects that compose the human being, of the extraordinary being that they in fact are. And and it considers the individual to be unique but not separate from the other, and not separate from nature in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we both have studied with Indian teachers, and yeah, and it's because of that I have some knowledge of the Vedas. So
Mm.
Ayurveda came out of the Vedas. Is that correct? It's the
Yeah.
more medicine approach to. Well, I'll let you explain it. So.
Well, Ayurveda is, it literally translates to the science of life. So
Mm,
it's a whole philosophy, um, for how we live. And it gives us the tools in all areas of life, which include how we conduct ourselves, our lifestyle. It gives us remedies in the form of plant remedies and healing therapeutic
mm,
substance. It gives
mm.
us diet as therapeutic gesture and remedy. It gives us detoxification treatments. It gives us therapeutic treatments with the Marma Chikitsa. And so it's just all these components so that we can be well. in life. So that, as I said earlier, it brings us into our own lane, our own business of being. What does that mean? That there's not discord. When there's discord, then there's a lack of ease. And this is where disease
Yeah.
arises from. So Ayurveda gives us the tools to really manage ourselves so that we have a life that is free of the bondage of ignorance, whatever that means for everybody listening.
Yeah.
That can be free of having a headache, a gut ache, a knee ache. That can be free of being terrified of loving, terrified of living, terrified of dying. It covers everything.
When I was in India, I went to see a doctor, Dr. Pankaj. Are you familiar with him?
I am very familiar with him because he was my teacher and I apprenticed with him for many, many years.
Oh, okay.
And he's still my teacher. He left his body 12 months ago, 6 days ago, but he still teaches me.
I did not realize that. Wow, what a connection.
Yeah.
So I saw Dr. Pankaj and he did the pulses. This is the first time I've been to see an Ayurvedic doctor in my life. And he does my pulses and he goes, "Hi, Vata." And, since then I've, read about the 3 different doshas and tried to do things to mitigate that high Vata diagnosis. And he was very specific with me about no one from the West or America, everybody that I knew that saw him was told not to eat wheat. And oddly enough, I can eat wheat in Australia, but I cannot eat wheat in America because of the toxic effects that it has on my body. But this was like in the early 2001 when he told me this. So before people knew about Roundup on wheat and all of these things that they do in the United States. But yeah, but now because of the COVID shutdown and being at home and doing a lot of stuff on the computer and things, I mean, I haven't been to see an Ayurvedic practitioner, but I mean, I just feel so kapha. I just feel so kapha. And so I want you to explain to them about the doshas. Okay. And about how our body, obviously, I mean, my body has changed from one dosha to another. And then I know when people are passing away, they typically are more vata as they're passing away.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the doshas.
I would love to. And particularly in context of what you've just raised and shared, what I would like to bring into the conversation is that, there's governing forces that govern us. As Claire has just mentioned, as you said, Claire, it's Vata. So there's 3 governing forces in the body, and Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And so it's the force of motion, of movement, all composed of the elements of nature. So it's the motion and movement is air and gas in the body. Pitta is the governing force of energy. So it's heat, it's energy, it's fire. And so it transforms, it creates, it transmutes. And then there is the governing force of cohesion, of structure. And this is kapha. So it's the phlegm, it's the mucus component. And then overriding, underwriting, all around, underpinning everything in the universe, in our being, are the qualities. And in Ayurveda, we call these the gunas.
Gunas.
And so the qualities underpin everything. And I mention this because the qualities are lightness, purity, attachment, and heaviness, dimness. So they influence everything that we do. We have all 3 of these doshas in us. And by our inherent constitution, which is a combination of our hereditary lineage, it's a combination of many things. I don't know, for people listening, if you believe that we are born, that we take birth more than once, then you can say, well, there are karmic influences that influence our doshas. There's so many determinants. But what it means is that we all individually have a certain dominance of one particular dosha, of one particular force in our body. But these are never stagnant, they're living. So they're dynamic, they're always in a state of movement, and they're always equilibralizing themselves, always coming back to a place of rhythm, if you will. Now, we also have different phases in life. And this is where Vata is so important, because the human being, well, in fact, everything in nature, but let's talk about the human being, because this is about, human beings dying, living and dying.
Right.
So I think it's pertinent to speak of it in context of the human. From birth until 16 years of age, it's a kapha dominant phase of life. What does it mean? The architecture, our physical temple, our architecture, our body has more dominant forces. So the foundations are being laid for life. So this is why, if you think about it, small children will get lots of upper respiratory tract infections, throat infections, coughs, cold, runny nose, lots of mucus comes out of their ears, it comes out of their eyes, the little dribbly, especially little boys, little dribbly, gorgeous, chunky, just juicy beings. They're so full of these juices, of which, interestingly, wheat is a great food to build the juices.
Okay.
And now, this lays the foundation for the next phase of life. It gives the buffer, the architecture, the cohesiveness for how we then meet the next phase of life, which is the Pitta years. And this is from like 16 through until 50, 55. So this is the Pitta phase of life, where we create, where we make our mark, we create, we're driven, we have motivation, we have reproductive forces, we can create anything, including life.
Right.
How amazing is that? And so just the mere experiences, the mere hormonal processes that go with that, I mean, we want pretty good juices as a buffer to be able to navigate our way and be anchored in our body through the Pitta phase of life.
Wow.
But then what happens is we move into the third phase of life, and it's the Vata phase of life. So regardless of your constitution, there is going to, by nature, be a dominance of the Vata forces, which is the air and gases in everybody. Man, woman, however you identify with yourself, there will be a dominance of Vata in the body from age 55 onward. And it is because by nature you are dying.
Exactly.
You are mineralizing. Vata degenerates by nature.
Okay.
Vata is also, it spiritualizes by nature. So two things are happening in this third phase of life. Vata becomes more dominant. So the body is hardening and mineralizing, going back to the earth from where the physical body came and has been nourished. Simultaneously, all the forces, now for women, curiously, all the forces that were tied in with reproductive health are loosening. This occurs also with men, but with women, the threshold is more obvious for so many with menopause. And it's because these forces are loosening and they're freeing themselves up, because the task of the individual, the human, is changing, and it's to become more spiritualized. And so the movement is more orientated upward, because you're in fact ascending, going back to the cosmic realm. So there's two streams happening. Part is going up, part is going down. Now, why do we pacify Vata? Because if it's not pacified, if it's aggravated, the body will age too quickly. the body will degenerate too quickly. The body will become hard and rigid. So that can show up physically as stiffness.
Mm-hmm.
As stiffness. We'll leave it as that.
I feel that.
You get it. I get it. And then it can show up emotionally as oversensitivity. Everything's about me. It's all, we take on everything. We're personal because it's moving up too strongly up through the rhythmic realm. So we become arrhythmic, and it's harder to self-regulate our feelings. And so we become oversensitive. Sensitive's great. It's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But when we're harnessed, it's a beautiful thing. And then mentally, it can become fear and worry because it moves up to the head in an irregular way, and it cannot come back down unless we know how to bring it back down. And so Vata, whilst it's motion and governs our nervous system function, it does many things in our body, but one of the things is it governs our nervous system function. One of the qualities of Vata is that it's intuition.
It's what?
It's intuition.
Oh, intuition.
It's insightfulness. And this is what we're supposed to experience more as we age, as we mature. We've got to let go of striving to accomplish and achieve as we did when we had all these, Pitta driven forces really strongly in us, because it's time for somebody else to take over, and we move into a stage of being, and we move into the seat of being the elder. And it really is a time to share our stories, to guide those to come. They need us to do it.
Wow.
And we need society to give us the space, the encouragement, the love, the nourishment, and the support
and respect.
To do it. And then it's not fearful contraction. Okay, it is beautiful ease, and we don't age too quickly nor too fearfully. And a way just even to check in now, I just ask everybody listening, just feel into your feet for a moment. How are your feet? Are they soft and open? Are your toes open, warm and relaxed? Or do they feel tight, maybe even a little clenched? And if so, have a foot bath. I invite you to have a foot bath to bring all these forces back down, to soften you, to open you, to receive this incredible life intelligence that's going to give you your solutions for whatever you face now, whether you're dying yourself, I mean, we all are, but whether you have illness, a terminal illness, that whether you're caring for somebody who is dying right now, whatever your situation may be, Vata is to be pacified. And then you're able to receive what life wishes to give you, so that it can be an elegant, spiritualized, loving, graceful, and grace-filled experience of living.
I want to ask you about the foot bath, because that is something that is so simple to do. And I think as you were leading us through that, I mean, I'm sitting on my feet, so they were like, it's something that, it's something so simple to do. So specifically, just warm water, lotion, do you use essential oils? I mean, how do you do a foot bath?
The most therapeutic way to have a foot bath is to simply get a foot bath or a bucket, or whatever you have available to you, and fill it with hot water. so that you don't want it to be tepid, but not too hot that it's uncomfortable. And if you have access to a lemon, then cut a lemon in half, score the top, you can squeeze it just lightly and pop that in. Because it has a drawing effect. It draws down. And so, everything in the body, and in Ayurveda, it's about communication, process, flow. It's about circuitry. And so when things aren't working in us, it means there's a block, there's an impediment in the communication, in the process, in the flow. And so foot baths are wonderful for redistributing, and especially if stuck in the head, if stuck and living from here up. So if you're thinking too much, I don't know what I'm feeling, I'm confused, I'm fatigued. Foot bath, it brings it back down. Because if feeling that way, then there's also going to be a likelihood that you're more permeable and really just to absorbing so much stuff that's not even you. And so the lemon in the foot bath is great for just antidoting all of this. It's a very therapeutic gesture. You can do it every day. You cannot overdo it.
So a patient, a person that's a caregiver,
everybody,
a doctor that's on their feet all the time. I mean, yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, okay. So there are people that you have worked with that have had life-threatening illnesses. I mean, I don't ask you to go into specific people, but just in general, when people are given a life-threatening diagnosis, what are some of the things that you've experienced working with them? And what would you recommend for people?
Yeah, the thing is, nobody can give you one more breath than the divine intended for you to have.
Exactly.
I cannot do that. You cannot do that. If a physician or a healer tells you so, then I encourage you to check in with your heart as interpreter and to really think what is true for you. But the thing is that Ayurveda gives us, and many great healing modalities do, the opportunity to work with the quality of each breath. So again, we're working with quality. And so I mentioned earlier the gunas, these qualities that underpin all these governing forces in the body. And essentially, we're always striving toward the highest intelligence. And the quality that gets us there is one really of light and of truth and of beauty and purity. And so we work in a way, and it's different for each individual, the language that I will use, because if you've just been given diagnosis or you're unwell, it's so important to speak a language of resonance, if you will, a language that is understood. And so first and foremost is we're wanting to understand ourselves. So if we have an encounter and I understand you, I have to be able to articulate to you in a way that you really experience that I understand you.
Yeah.
I understand what is happening to you on all levels of your being right now. So this is a healing gesture in itself. Something is starting to happen. And then without even before going into the remedies, which we do Ayurvedically, well, then we're working on bringing these parts that are aggravated or underactive, tonifying, always bringing back to alignment. Yes, addressing and managing the symptoms simultaneously, because that's important, but always working underneath to the root, to the root, to the root, and qualitatively working so that this experience of self, this experience of light can really be known in a way that it's to be known to the person. And they can they can find their own ultimate solutions.
Yeah, it reminds me of a baby when they are, starting to grow. They're learning to self-soothe themselves. If
Mm.
they're getting appropriate parenting, they aren't picked up all the time. They learn to self-soothe themselves. And as I've been with people that are dying, to I see them do the same thing in reverse, that they are, particularly the ones that are empowered, to speak to what it is that they want and need, whether it's touch or not touch, or hear this music, not that music, to watch the football game, to, have a massage. I mean, it really varies from person to person, but
Yeah.
that ability to self-soothe themselves, and then when they get to a terminal condition, that there are things that are put in the space and the place to uplift the energy. And often I'll do co-breathing with them, the prana energy. I don't call it that, but just co-breathing and the vigiling. So it just brings the energy in the room into this peaceful state, just by me as a doula connecting with the breathing, and sometimes you can even match the breathing of the person that's dying, or they match it to yours, but it just changes the energy in a really amazing way. So talk about
Yes.
the prana energy a little bit,
Yeah.
because I think that's really powerful at the end of life.
Absolutely. And this is so important, like bringing it back to Vata, in this phase of life. This is why pranayama, this is why breathing, intentional breathing, and is so beneficial for
Mm,
one's well-being.
mm,
And it's about going with life, being present with life, and no longer resisting. And as you were describing and speaking to the self-soothing, we do find ways from birth. We're finding ways to self-soothe, and we bring in all the senses to do it. Anthroposophically, in anthroposophic medicine, we call it 12 senses. And there are so many different ways throughout life that people do it.
mhm.
And why? The question is why? To become more fully human in the experience in this body, to allow all the subtle bodies to be able to fully penetrate, so that we really have an experience of who we are. And so it makes sense, of course, that when dying, the same processes, the same methods of soothing ourselves are going to be sought.
I love what you mentioned earlier about, we only are allotted so many breaths in life.
Yes.
And there's really not much that you or I or anyone can do to, even though we see modern medicine certainly extending life, you could argue that that is meant to be. And there are, so many breaths allotted that we have. But it's fascinating to see what the body, again, I go back to birth a lot, but I went through natural childbirth without planning on it, and had an experience where there was just, when it was actually happening, there was no pain. There's something naturally that happens down there that just numbs you, and you don't really feel what's going on. And I've experienced in the same way when people are dying, that there are processes that our body physiologically knows to do in a natural death environment, to, well, I mean, I've had a near death experience. So, I mean, it's just like where it is not painful, the body is going to do things that will support you in a natural dying process that we don't talk about, we don't think about, but I've experienced it myself, and I've seen it in so many other people that is a reality.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because what occurs when a woman births? It's like these subtle bodies that I speak of, they're all open. It's like the veils, it's not even that the veils are thin, it's open. Everything is
Yeah.
open.
Mm,
Like a woman is open to source.
exactly.
And at that threshold, it's a new birth for the mother, for she who is birthing, as well as for the soul, for the child who is being birthed.
Wow.
There are many births taking place, and similarly, this is occurring at death.
Oh, it's such a
Like
portal.
whether we're, whether it's pain, it's just that we bring joy and celebration around birth, and it must be a very traumatic experience for the child being born. I don't think the newborn's celebrating at all. I think they feel like they've just died, terrified.
Yeah,
But it's the opposite at death,
exactly.
and yet it really is. It's another. It's a threshold. It's this threshold where we're just so open. And similarly, I've had two near-death experiences, and in the first one, I hemorrhaged during a miscarriage and lost consciousness, and in the hospital, and was taken to hospital. In the hospital, there was a point where I went down. I was leaving my body, and it was all bells and whistles to try and stabilize me. But I was hovering. I was hovering above myself, and it was the most peaceful, beautiful thing I've experienced. It was just so loving. It
Mm.
was so loving. And, but they stabilized me. I didn't stay out above myself. I came back. It wasn't my time. But the second experience I had, it was horrible. I was so frightened. It was a cardiac event, and I was terrified. I was terrified. It was such a contrast experience. I was fighting with all I had. I
Mm.
could feel every cell in my body trying to generate warmth to keep me in my body.
Mm.
It was such a different experience, and I tasted what it was like to resist death,
Mm.
and the fear of not wishing to die. It's a really curious thing.
Dipika, this is so amazing because I've had two near death experiences as well. And my first one was full of fear. I felt the life force draining out of my body. I too was hemorrhaging from a post surgical situation. And I felt the life force leaving my body. And I was afraid. I was so afraid. And the second time when it happened, I was just kind of shocked, like, this is how I'm going to go, and I started repeating a mantra that I use regularly in meditation, and that, it just came naturally to me to repeat that. And as I was leaving my body, as I was going in and out of out of consciousness, the mantra that I was repeating started repeating inside me. And I wasn't afraid at all. I was just like, I was just more, I was just matter of fact about it, really.
Mm.
And yeah, that was in 2016. So, I mean, I'd been doing this work and working with people and dying, for many years before that. And I think it's important for people to hear that there are in that experience, there are ways that we can look at it ahead of time before the event to support a natural death, so we can have relatively a pain-free and that peaceful higher level energy when we die. And
Yeah,
that's what I do, support.
beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And it's different to everybody. It's different to everybody. But I think what I would always extend the invitation, and I extend it to everybody listening, is to be asking questions of yourself, observing things about yourself, and asking the question, is it true? Is that really true? Because nature's not really a trickster, but how we perceive ourselves and identify with ourselves can be really mischievous.
Yes.
And when we start to ask these questions just with kind eyes,
Kind eyes.
listen with kind ears, and feel with generosity of our own heart, then the way we relate to ourselves and living and dying can start to shift in perspective.
Mm.
And for me, the way I relate to it is that we start to get in touch with the resonance of our own magnificent rhythm, the pulsating life that's unique to us, unique to you and you and you. It's like, what does it feel like? What does it sound like? And suddenly, false agenda, the things that we're hanging on to that we think matter, they just loosen a bit. They just loosen a bit, and we can get present to hear what do I need to do now? What do I need to do next? And solutions, again, healing solutions, things start to appear. People start to appear. It might be, hey, I think this service would have some really great resources for you. It could be a real support for you and your family right now. Things, synchronicity, because a synergy starts to occur. And what I love is, and what I've observed is that people who are conscious and work in the way that you do, Claire, and your organization do around dying, there is so much kindness.
Mm. Yes.
So much kindness.
Yeah.
And that's calming. It's such a tonic. It's so soothing. It's like a balm.
I
And then
was
we
going to say
breathe
the
out.
same thing about you. I am listening to you, and rarely am I without words, but I don't want to talk because as I listen to you, the sound of your voice, the pace of your talk, the content of what you say just puts me in that state as if I've stuck my foot in a warm lemon bath, foot bath.
You're in the foot bath. I love it. I love it because it's warming. The foot baths are warming because I don't know. Look, I think for me, it's at the end of the day, for myself, it's about getting out of my own way so I can just love and be fully alive so that I can die every moment.
Mm.
And when my final breath comes, for the moment where I die and leave this physical body, I, I want to be present for it. I want to be feeling love. I really do in that moment. And because I'm pretty attached to those that I love,
Of course.
I want to be that for them.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to experience it with love so that then when they're faced with death,
And that's what we really encourage because one of the one of the things that we give to people that are with us when we're dying, people that are fortunate enough to see someone as they transition, we are teaching others how to die. And sometimes it's from what goes wrong,
Mm.
and sometimes it's from what goes right. But
Yeah.
we're so removed from death and dying that we don't know how to die anymore. And that used to not be the case. So
Mm.
it's great to support people to be with you.
Yeah, something happened when we removed ourselves from
Joking.
caring for the dying, when we removed ourselves from the ritual around dying, when we gave that away to others. Uh, a really curious thing occurred in the individual, in the families, in the communities, in the social realm. And it's time for us to consciously embrace it back into our lives again.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because we're hungry to feel alive. We're just hungry to feel alive now. And this is all part of it.
Yeah.
Painful, yeah, because we love, but it's just it's real. It's
But,
nature.
and and this is just a physical body. It's not like we don't have a body or a purpose or a life after we leave this body. And not everyone believes that, but
Not a,
it doesn't even matter if you don't believe it, you know? It's just we are so blessed to be in a human body,
yeah.
to have this experience, and to go through the journey with all its highs and lows. And I have this vision that when we get back on the other side, we're kind of like with our schoolmates and kind of laughing at, oh, you did this, you did that. Ha, 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 ha. It's just, I think there's a lot of levity on the other side that, yeah, you mentioned it earlier that we don't need to take this so seriously and heavily and overthink it. We can
We don't have to overthink it.
and
We
and
don't have to overthink it, but we
and
have to feel ourselves. I
and
think that's the invitation.
your experience of having fear when you were resisting,
Mm.
I mean, and rightly so, because here you are right now teaching us right now. But it's in that resistance and not being able to let go, not feeling finished with the work that needs to be done, that really does make it harder for people. And that's another thing that we do, is that we work with people to look at what is left to be done and how can we support them to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really it's getting real. It's getting down, getting authentic, stripping it all back to what do I want?
So what do you,
What do I
what,
want? And
well, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? What are you going to be doing with your work and with your life? And what do you want?
in 5 years, it's my wish to be loving more,
Mhm.
loving myself more, loving my family more, doing less, working lighter, more being, more fun, more generosity of myself, and ideally to be far more simplified than it is today.
Yes. Well, you
Far
certainly
more
You
simplified.
certainly give generously right now. I mean, I've seen you in a lot of different settings, and I think if I described you in any way besides being a loving, wise woman, it's that you're very, very generous, not only with your time but your skills and talents. So, as we finish this conversation, there will be people that want to know more about Ayurvedic uh, techniques, perhaps. There may be people that want to get in touch with you. Uh, what do you recommend for people that want to take this conversation further, and how could they contact you if they wanted to? If you want.
Sure. Okay. So if you wish to learn about, any more about my work and what I do, then I invite you to visit dipikadelmenico.com.
And we'll have the link. So
Okay. Yeah. You can add yourself to the musing list, and then, you'll receive regular offerings. There are a lot of offerings. There are monthly webinars, free webinars with which are live Q&A, where you bring your questions about anything. Kind of crazy, right? To just go live and say, bring it on, ask anything. But I do. So we go wherever it needs to go. And because it's about creating solutions and not compounding or creating more problems. And if you wish to read, I've written The Ayurvedic Woman, which is wellness in all phases of womanhood. But whilst it's written, it's a book that was written about women. It's really, there's a lot of human-centered principles in it, and the phases of life, and how to manage oneself through all the phases of life. And our sound, our resonance by our grand design, it's all there in the book. And so it is, I have many men like to read it because they like to understand the feminine more fully.
is that something you get on Amazon, or where do they?
Yes, yeah, Amazon, The Ayurvedic Woman, and it's all online retailers.
Okay, I'll put that link in too.
Yeah, you can follow me on Facebook, Dipika Delmenico. But yeah, I think they're great ways to get in touch. I do regular workshops and courses and programs, from short courses through to 12-month mentorship programs, and which are the Leadership in Love programs. And yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for the wisdom that you shared with us today. I mean, I am kind of blown away, and I do something at the end of each podcast. I'll timestamp it so I have different things, and I can't wait to go back and listen to this podcast again. I really am looking forward to it. Beyond just the post production, I am just really looking forward to listening to it again, because you taught so much. It was almost hard to like take it all in. I just want to go back and savor each moment that this conversation brought about. And I am just so glad I've met you. I am so glad that I've met you. Really, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Claire. Thank you for all you do. This is such important work. I did death walker training quite a few years ago. I thought, oh, this is my calling. And clearly it's not my time, but it's such important work to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm so humbled and grateful that you're doing what you're doing, and that anybody who feels a calling to this, when they're ready to be offering and be of service in this way.
Yeah.
Because my gosh, what vulnerable, authentic, meaningful work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dipika, thank you so much. And we'll sign out now. Thank you very much.
Bye. Lots of love.
Yeah.